self-control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our Wednesday edition of the Paranormal Portal on the YouTube-only live stream, the VIP stream, if you will.
Nice.
Well, it's just, you know, we gotta give it something kind of highbrow or make you all feel important, because you are important to us. I mean, you guys are the reason we do this. But we hope you're having a wonderful week. It is Hump Day's Eve. And you're really almost at the weekend, so the painful part is over. So, very cool.
Nice, yes.
That's, wow.
What's that?
Let me see something. Hold on.
Oh, did it pick something up? Is that what I heard in my earphones?
Yeah, there's some kind of voice. Okay. It says message.
Huh?
It says message. So, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Before I get any further, let me, of course, introduce my co-host and good friend and co-host, Mr. Don Longbeard.
This guy over here, you know.
That's the one I'm talking about.
The guy is so happy he's got 2 thumbs.
All right. He's got 2 thumbs and a whole lot of mischief. So he is here with me, and we are, of course, excited to bring you a show, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing here. I'm trying a little test here in the Paranormal Portal studios, and I think it could be kind of cool, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, this is what we're doing. No, not that one, but this one.
There you go.
What I've got here is one of those ghost apps, and I had it for years and years and years. And I finally dug it up from my old laptop, and I've got it going here. And I'm just seeing, and I have it also on my laptop going on next to me. So what we're doing here is kind of a live side-by-side test to see if there's any synchronicity between what these two are seeing. Now, essentially, a lot of people just kind of, dismiss these paranormal apps with like, oh, it's a bunch of bunk, it's a gimmick and all of that. Now, let me just tell you that when I first started looking into these things, I did some research, and essentially everybody's phones and, anything that you're using that uses wireless has what's called a magnetometer on it. Now, they work on cell phones. They work on laptops. They work on, this desktop that I'm using for the main computer has a, built-in wireless as well. So it uses an onboard magnetometer, and a magnetometer should be able to detect electromagnetic fields within a range. And so we're going to test it out just to see. And you see that the radar thing, this circular area here should give me an indication if there is any kind of spiritual presence anywhere near. Now, as a caveat to this, I do want you to know that Don and I are burning actual frankincense here in the studio because I ain't playing with nothing dark here. This is all about
He ain't
light.
afraid no ghost.
So we actually got the charcoal with the frankincense burning behind us here. So, and the studio smells great, if I do say so myself. I like the smell of this, Don. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking it's working pretty nice. It's not overpowering.
Right, it's tasteful.
Yeah.
It's a tasteful smell. But in case you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, frankincense is every bit as powerful, if not more powerful, than just burning sage, as far as pushing away negative presences and stuff. And I have sage as well, but I didn't want a smoke room in here, so I just opted for doing the frankincense resin on the charcoal burning behind us on the countertop back there. So we are cleansing the environment as we're doing this, so we don't want anything dark coming through and making itself known. So we'll see as we go tonight if anything comes up on this. I think I'm going to leave it in the 3-panel mode. What are you thinking, Don?
I don't see why not.
That way everybody in real time can see what's going on as well. And this is one, again, I've had it for years. I got this one way back in 2012 or 2013, and the principles are the same. Although there's more gag detectors out there than there are real legitimate, allegedly legitimate, and this was supposed to be legitimate back in the day. And of course, this is an ex-paranormal detector, and it's old. So maybe there's a newer version out there, but I just dug it out and I said, let's try this as part of what we do here on the Paranormal Portal, because we certainly have done the Spirit Radio, the Tesla Spirit Radio before, and that was fun. But I haven't caught anything really interesting on that yet. But we'll do this and see if anything happens, if anything comes up. And, something's going on. You hear that noise?
Yeah.
So now that one quickly detected allegedly 2 spiritual presences, but this one is not connecting. The one that I have showed on the screen here is not detecting that at all. So that sounds like funky to me. Like, nah, that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it correlated, that would be really cool. But since it didn't correlate, and it was only momentarily, it did show a big spike in those detectors.
Yeah, big spike.
Now the difference is, and I have to look here. Let me just look on my laptop or on my computer here. I do want to see this. Yeah, see, I have built-in internet, so it's got built-in wireless on this as well. Now I am running through a plugged-in connection, and so that's. I don't know if that puts the wireless on standby here on the desktop computer. I never thought about that until now. But that's certainly a consideration as well. So maybe the desktop wouldn't detect it as well because it probably has the wireless on standby since it's using the direct Ethernet cable. But anyway, it'll be curious to watch throughout the night, see if anything comes up or not. But again, the one on the laptop says it did detect 2. It says detected 2 spirits within 25 yards for about 6 seconds.
6 seconds?
And that's what it says.
Wow.
I don't know. It says it detected it for about 6 seconds, and the word that we heard when we were coming live was message. So this one apparently picked up a word and a presence.
Huh.
So we'll see if somebody's got a message for us. Hopefully we'll get it. I don't know.
Hopefully it'll come through loud and semi-clear.
But this is the Paranormal Portal, so it behooves us to experiment as well as talk to you about phenomena. Now tonight what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the Wicked Witch phenomena and other manifestations of the like. Now, I think that a lot of the idea behind this old Wicked Witch is for me, it seems to stem largely from superstition and religious dogma, and any of the mainstream churches, whether it was synagogues, mosques, or churches, teach to not look into other religions. They teach you to, adhere to what you're learning in their practices, and of course they cast a negative light on anything outside of that. Not, even between themselves, You know what I mean? I mean, it's just like they're not even nice to each other about it. It's like everything else is evil except for us. And ladies and gentlemen, I honestly am never trying to slam anybody's religion. I've said it many times, and I'll say it again. Religion is beautiful. Having faith is a beautiful thing. Whatever works for you, I am absolutely thrilled that you have it, and I will tell you to throw yourself into it wholeheartedly, because having a connection to the divine is never a bad thing. Excuse me. But I think that the fear that can come as a result of religious practice, I think, is counterproductive, because I believe that the amazing, outstanding, phenomenal miracle of that we understand as God doesn't have just one presentation. I think religion is there's let's put it in a parable. There's a great garden with many gates going around this beautiful garden, but it has a fence. And you walk around this fence to find the gate that's written in a language that you understand, that you can enter into this beautiful garden. And to me, those gates are the religion. Those are the different practices of religion to bring you into this beautiful garden. And none is wrong or right or anything, because if they lead you into this place of beauty and wonder, then it's a beautiful thing. Now, the problem is when there's people by the gate going, don't go to those other gates. Those other gates are not good. Those are the evil people going in there, but you're the good people. You come in here. And that's where the problems begin for a lot of seekers. Now, I kind of, for me personally, and I never want the show to be about me, but I can only speak to my experiences. And believe me, I tried many approaches to religion throughout the years of my life. I tried, several different versions of organized religion, and unfortunately, none of them felt right to me. And maybe that's my ego. Maybe that's me just getting it wrong. Whatever your opinion of that is, you could be right. I don't know. I can only follow the truth of my heart. So for me, what I found was more of a Bruce Lee approach to religion. It's like, take the parts that work for you and bring it into your own. Bruce Lee didn't study just one martial art. He studied many, many martial arts and took segments and pieces of them to make his own Jeet Kune Do. And so I kind of look at it the same way for religion, that there's some parts of all religions that I think are beautiful, and I take parts of them to bring me closer to God. And that is my Jeet Kune Do of spirituality. I don't know if that's the best, metaphor for it, but whatever.
Well, it makes sense though,
Right.
and your idea of the garden, that's quite interesting too. There's a couple people said, in the chat that, yeah, that's interesting, and one person even agreed with you.
Well, I always appreciate that.
Yeah.
Not
There
that I
you go.
expect it. Again, we are
Right.
individuals. We all have our own journey, our own path,
Right.
and your journey is right for you. My journey is right for me, and so I don't pretend to be able to speak to people about what they should or shouldn't believe.
Right.
Find it
Right.
in your heart, whatever that means. So those are just my 2 cents. But in essence, what had happened then is I think that there's a bleed through from it in that anything outside of it became wicked and evil. And then we look to history to see things like the witch trials of Spain, and then later in the United States, the young United States, and the Salem witch trials, and the Inquisition in Spain, and so many horrible situations where people were using their faith as giving them license to absolutely decimate other populations. And we still see that in the world today, where faith is being used as an excuse to tear down other peoples, which I can't imagine doing that could be in line with what faith is supposed to be. But in that became the embodiments of the wicked witch. Witchcraft, of course, has been around forever, but there's many different titles for it. There is allegedly a difference between witchcraft and Wicca. I don't understand the intricacies of it, but in any case, there are white witches. There are, of course, Wiccan practitioners are not evil, for practicing that. And so this idea of these wicked people being brought before for judgment, but there are real phenomena that have happened where people are experiencing what we commonly refer to in the paranormal as the old crone. And this old crone embodiment seems to happen quite a lot, and it comes up a lot in the sleep paralysis, that the old crone is oftentimes what many people suffering from sleep paralysis will see, is this old haggard woman pinning them down on the bed and they can't move, and it's like sucking their life force or whatever. And so these things do come up in paranormal circles. Now, that is not one in the same to, one does not equal the other, Am I making sense, Don, or am I just babbling here?
No, no.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I'm just going through my thoughts in my in my head and trying to spit them out as they come up. But there is the correlation of people actually witnessing and experiencing these wicked witches, for lack of a better term. But I don't want that to be confused with an idea that the Paranormal Portal says that witchcraft is evil, because I don't think that it is. I think that anything can be good or it can be evil depending on how it's used, and I have nothing against other spiritual practices other than the mainstream ones as well. So I want to put that out there right away, that this isn't about bashing witchcraft. It isn't about bashing people's ideas of other religions and how whatever path they're following. So what this is about the people that are experiencing the old crone, the wicked witch-looking thing that seems to defy physical explanation as far as being extraordinarily tall but hunched over like an evil crone, or some ghostly, haggard-looking woman that seems to attack people. And sometimes, that's referred to a lot in sleep paralysis, and that's where they come up with the old crone definition for sleep paralysis, is because many people were reported being held down by this old haggard woman with white wicked hair and just and pinning them down. So, and we see that in our popular cultures and in our entertainment and such. And in fact, the picture that I used for the promo banner for the show tonight was from one of my favorite movies growing up, and it was called Legend with Tom Cruise. And I think Tim Curry played the big devil guy, but my God, that movie was really, it was a little cheesy, a little campy, but I love that movie. I just love that movie. So if you haven't checked it out, ladies and gentlemen, find Legend if you like those old, those kind of fantasy kind of movies, because that to me was amazing. And they did a nice job. And when you see Tim Curry come out, and if you haven't seen the movie, you've probably seen depictions of him from that movie in his full makeup. But he's got those huge horns. And he's
Watusi horns,
right? And he's all buff and just, and he's got the deep voice. It was just like, oh my God! And he had, they do a scene of him stepping out of the mirror, and his big hooves are hitting the ground. It's like, ugh. It
was great.
They did a phenomenal job with that movie. So tonight we're going to be talking about the paranormal witch, not the spiritual or esoteric practice of witchcraft or Wicca. So just putting that out there first. So we're going to get into a few of these stories and see what you guys think. But I think it's interesting, and I hope you enjoy the show. But before we go any further, Don, how you been?
I've been good. What, today's Wednesday? Oh, I think I only have 3 more days to work this week, and then next week 6 days, and everything should be good. And then, hey, have we gotten a date for Sasquatching?
Oh, no, I put it out there to Cindy, but she said, we can probably hammer one down, but we haven't actually nailed it down. So I'll talk to Cindy again and try to figure out. You're talking about the first week of September, right?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Yeah, so I can, get a day off. Yeah.
Get some time in there.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
Absolutely.
Especially if we're out at her place.
Yeah, I don't know.
Take all of our recorders and everything.
If we go to Priest Lake? There's supposed to be a bunch going on there, or Spirit Lake or something. I don't know.
Priest Lake, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised there, but you got people up there that like John Stockton, the basketball player, and you got a whole bunch of people that live around that lake, just famous. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, well, no big deal. They're people.
Exactly.
But it's been a good week. Looking for a day off to go do something a little more active.
Yeah, we definitely will, and we'll get that nailed in, and we'll be sure to let you guys know about it in the form of showing you what we found or figured out.
Yeah.
Cool. So I was going to say, I just wanted to say a special thank you to Sarah in San Diego who picked up a T-shirt this last week.
Nice.
Actually, she ordered it the last week, but I didn't see it until this week because I was so busy last week. But we got that sent out to her, and thank you very much. And if you'd like a Paranormal Portal shirt or hat of your own, or hoodie or whatever, head over to Paranormal Portal Radio at paranormalportalradio.com. Sorry.
I'm used to saying the one screwing it up.
I know. I'm not used to saying that site, and that's kind of a tragedy because I should probably promote it more because it certainly does help to support us.
Yep.
And towards helping us get more gear for the show. But
definitely that. But
definitely thank you, Sarah, and I appreciate it, and I hope you love it. If you have any problems, let me know. We'll make it right for you as soon as possible. But if you have any complaints tonight, feel free to call the complaint line number, which is listed on the bottom of your screen.
213-233-3998.
That's right. And
give a call and say, hey, I don't appreciate what you're talking about.
Just let them know what you think is wrong with this episode.
Well, I don't understand the correlation between 42 and everything else.
That's right.
Sorry.
No, if you see the number on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't work tonight. This is our Wednesday streams. Wednesday streams, we're not on the network at all, so it's just you and us and YouTube. We're doing our special YouTube VIP edition for you every Wednesday night. So the call-in number won't work, but you're welcome to call it, but you're not going to get us. So, but anyway, let's get into some of these stories and see what you guys think of this whole witchy thing. The witchy thing. Well, thank you. I got the microphone here, just like Elvis. Thank you.
Oh God.
Sorry, just wanted to do that. So the first one I'm going to read you is called "The Witch of Yazoo." The Witch of Yazoo's grave is located in Glenwood Cemetery in Yazoo, Mississippi. The legend of the Witch of Yazoo became famous in Willie Morris's book, Good Old Boy, published in 1971. According to the legend, the witch lived on the Yazoo River and was caught killing fishermen who she lured in. The sheriff at the time is said to have chased her through the swamps where she was half drowned in quicksand by the time he caught up with her. As she was sinking, she swore her revenge on Yazoo City. In 20 years, I will return and burn this town to the ground, she said on May 25th, 1904. 20 years to the day she died, Yazoo City was destroyed by fire.
Wow.
Gene Hamill, set out on an adventure to see if the Witch of Yazoo legend was true. Upon investigating the cemetery, I can say something is definitely going on in Yazoo City. Another investigator that I was working with had a meeting with a historian for an episode of Mississippi Parachasers that I was filming. 2 weeks later, the historian died in a mysterious car accident.
Wow.
The question that came to mind was this caused by the witch? My team and I got with the Triangle Museum to learn more about the fire that broke out in 1904. Strange noises and EVPs were recorded there when asked questions specifically about the witch. The first time I investigated the legend, it left me with more questions than answers. I went back months later to do another one, and what I found was astonishing. So much so that it chilled me to the core.
Wow.
I have posted the evidence of the Supernatural Research website.
Wow.
Of this on the Supernatural Research Society website. So I guess there's a Supernatural Research Society website.
That's a cliffhanger. Now we got to go there.
It is. Yeah, Don, you want to look up the Supernatural Research Society website?
Yeah, if I can remember all that. Hold on.
I'll leave that link up that information up. But it was posted by, what does he say his name is?
Gene Hamill.
Gene Hamill?
Right there, the second paragraph.
Okay.
Gene Hamill.
Okay, Gene Hamill. All right, so look it up.
Supernatural Research.
Thank you. So is that possible? And that would be a curse, I guess. And I don't know. If she was indeed a witch or if she was just presumed to be a witch or whatever. Now, there are many paranormal accounts of people being accused of something that they never did and leaving a curse of some kind behind. One of which that comes to mind was a man who was blamed for a murder, and he professed his innocence over and over and over and said, I didn't do this. And then as they were bringing him to the gallows, he put his hand on the wall and said, I am going to place my hand here, and my handprint will remain forevermore to proclaim my innocence, that I did not kill this person.
Wow.
The person was brought out, hung, and for 100 years since, whenever they paint over that spot, the handprint will reappear.
Wow.
So, is it true or not? I don't know. I haven't seen it myself, but that's the alleged truth to the story. Very interesting, though, huh?
Yeah, definitely that.
Right.
Wow.
Very curious. So, did you find anything?
There is a supernatural research society located in Lexington, North Carolina.
Okay. Do they not have a website?
No, they got a website. It looks pretty good. It's
okay.
srsocietync.webs.com.
Okay.
I'm trying to just kind of recent forum posts. Let's see. I don't see
so
any
look for
search.
something about if the Witch of Yazoo. Yazoo, or look for Yazoo maybe.
You know what? I'm not seeing much on here, really.
Huh. I wonder if you Google the Witch of Yazoo if you'll find out anything. All
yeah,
right.
I'll look into that too.
Okay, let me get on to the next one then, ladies and gentlemen. And so what my point of that was that it's not necessarily an admission that this person was in fact involved in evil acts on their own. It could be that was her way of, saying, screw you guys, I'm not the problem. And to prove it, I'm going to come get my revenge. Is it true or not? I don't know. Again, a lot of these are twisted in legend and lore and retellings and such, and it's hard to know where the truth lies. But that's interesting. If there is some more information posted that we could find, that'd be awesome. Okay, this is the Cemetery Witch. I'm still around, and I thought I would share some other experiences in my hometown when I was a preteen. For those who don't know, I grew up in a town of rural Connecticut. The village I live in is pretty small. When I was a preteen, there was a minimum to no actual crime in the town. My family lives pretty much scattered throughout the village and then in the next town over. And while it was quite a walk, I used to go over to my cousin's house pretty much every weekend because I had nothing to do at home. Now, for reference, my cousin's house is explained in my Ouija story, and I would go over there during the day, but almost always go home at night because I could not, for the life of me, sleep comfortably in that house. But that's a whole other story, which you can read on here. Sorry, I had a sniffle for a second. Anyways, my cousin's house is down in the valley of the town. The valley is the home of a man-made pond called Knife Shop. That's a weird name for a man-made pond. It's called Knife Shop. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I just read them. The reason it's called such is that it was made specifically to help power a large knife company that once resided in my hometown long before I was born. The knife company was eventually bought out, and as explained in other stories I've told more recently, the last standing building of the knife shop is in my backyard. Though now I'm a tad off topic. The knife shop was taken down, and a majority of my town is actually state parks, though not listed. As a kid, I used to love going and exploring the woods with my cousins on the weekends, and we almost always found an old section of the knife shop's foundation and made a little hut in it, or we played on it in the giant waterfalls that were once used to power the shop. There were many occasions when my cousins and I would be playing in the woods, then follow a path up and around the waterfalls, and we'd end up in the cemetery. My town had a very, very small cemetery that is split in two pieces, the old part and the new. We always ended up in the old part. I was never comfortable walking around the old cemetery. On to the actual point in all of this, my cousins and I popped out of the woods one day around noon and started to walk the driveway of the old cemetery back to the road. Halfway there, we stopped and found a turtle that had been crushed. But it wasn't on the road. It was on a headstone. So we sort of freaked out and left. Unfortunately, in order for me to get home, I had to walk back past the cemetery to go up the large hill where my house was. Around 4 or 5, I started my hike home, and as I was passing the cemetery, I saw a woman standing in the middle of the headstones watching me. She was definitely not alive. I could see through her. It's hard to explain what she looks like. She had long, wiry hair and a sneer on her face. She was in clothes probably from the 1800s. I actually froze on the grass next to the road and couldn't move for a moment or two. Then she cackled. I stood frozen and quiet for a moment before I booked it. I've got to say that I never ran the mile when I was in school. I always walked it, but I ran a mile uphill to my house and got there in under 10 minutes. Now, in my mid-20s, I go down to the cemetery to pay my respects to my grandparents, my cousins, and then I go to the old part of the cemetery to pay my respects to all my relatives buried in there. I have not seen that woman since, nor have I had any more dead animals shown up in the cemetery. I genuinely don't know why or who would have done any of that to bring about something as sinister as that woman. I can say very, very confidently that she radiated evil. And when I walk through the old cemetery now, I actually avoid the headstones where she stood. This was definitely the scariest experience of my life, but even though I have more recently, begun to work on my mediumship as I am sensitive to the other side, I have yet to experience another spirit as terrifying. Now that's very interesting. And what is again, that term witch gets used pretty universally to mean an old woman apparition. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair. But it is what it is. Did you find anything?
You know what I'm not finding anything on the Yazoo Witch in that website because I'm not able to sign into it, so I don't think it's a live website anymore.
Oh,
but
okay.
The Witch of Yazoo, okay.
Yeah, now this was posted as of August the 1st of this year.
Really?
Yeah, so it's not like an old story, but maybe their experience was old and whatever have you. I don't know. Very strange though. But that is curious. This old apparition, an old woman. I don't know what to make of that. I do believe that cemeteries generally have at least some active spirits there. Why they choose to stay there, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's some attachment remains with the physical body remains, and so they are always tethered to that for some reason, or have they chosen not to pass over and they really don't have anywhere else to go because everything else has changed to the point that there's nowhere to go visit that they used to know. I don't know. Very strange.
Huh.
I don't know. What do you think of stuff like that, Don?
It's one of those things. I mean, it's one of those things I've never experienced, so, I'm just going to have to go with it and say, well, okay. But, I mean, a smashed turtle on a headstone, that's kind of weird.
Well, I was thinking about that part, actually, since you mentioned that. And I believe that there's several birds of prey, like eagles, will lift turtles up and drop them on hard surfaces in order to expose the innards. So it is possible that was a tactic of a prey animal looking to expose the soft parts of the turtle.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, actually. So
does that ring a bell now that I've said that? That makes sense?
It does.
It did to me too, and as much as I love a good story, I mean again you've got to look at every possible angle.
Keep it real.
And while it's weird for most people to see a smashed turtle, that does happen. I believe it's eagles, golden or bald, that'll lift an eagle or a turtle up to high heights and drop it onto pavement or rock or whatever in order to get to the good stuff.
Well, smashing turtles is, whether it's a dog or even a bear, they'll get it in their jaws and slam it against a rock a couple times too. I mean, that's the same way otters eat oysters and clams. They'll get up there and they'll put it down on a rock and they'll knock a rock on top of it until they crack it open.
And Sasquatch do that too.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Just saying.
Just a midnight snack.
Just throwing it out there.
In Glenwood Cemetery in Yazoo City, large oval chain links surround a grave. There's no name associated with who's buried there. She's simply known as the Witch of Wazoo.
Wazoo or Yazoo?
Yazoo, sorry.
Okay.
It's your Wazoo. I got carried away with the zoos. The witch is very. What'd it say?
It's another detecting spirits, but only that one. No, this one caught a spike too.
Huh. Not
different
same time,
times, though.
Different
yeah.
times.
Yep.
Huh. Anyhow, okay. The witch is very much alive, said K.K. Hill, director of the Triangle Cultural Center in Yazoo City. The legend is like a big bellows that keeps blowing wind into the flames and keeps it going. Hill's analogy is appropriate, as the broken tombstone in Glenwood Cemetery states. On May 25th, 1904, the Witch of Wazoo City broke out of these curious chain links surrounding her grave and burned down the city of Yazoo.
Oh, so that's a little bit of sarcasm, is what?
Well, no, that's what the sign above the.
Oh.
There's, as a broken tombstone in Glenwood City Cemetery. So that's what it says. It says she broke through the chains and burned down the city.
Wow.
As legend has it, the woman whose name is not known lived on the Yazoo River and would lure fishermen in off the river and torture them. The sheriff found some skeletons in the witch's shed one day and wanted answers. So, yeah, apparently they're actually banking on this thing. So,
okay.
That's a kind of a long write-up, but yeah, apparently there's a witch in Yazoo City.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, and that correlates it, I guess, that there is a legendary witch there. Who knows the actual truth of the story? But what do? We're just bringing it to you live because we love you, and we love to talk about the paranormal however that manifests itself. Now, this one's called Witch Hunt. This is back when I used to ghost bust with friends. Ghost bust. And was one of the first times that I went ghost hunting. Usually I would go to this old historical war marker that's just outside my town, and I used to visit during childhood field trips. That's 30 minutes out of town. But there's an old cemetery a few miles down the street that I decided to go on this trip. I was at my friend Aaron's house playing video games with him on the couch of his living room when he brought up the idea of going on another ghost hunt, which I didn't hesitate to agree to. He also suggested that we bring another person along with us, and since Caitlin, my best friend, was out of town at the time, I chose Braden. He also didn't mind going since I had recently got him into ghost hunting. We all met up at the fanciest McDonald's in town about an hour before 1 a.m. and discussed what we would be doing and where we would go. Aaron suggested we go somewhere different, so I suggested the cemetery that was down the street from the fort that we usually go to. They agreed, and we were on our way, arriving at the grave site approximately around a little over 2 a.m. The gate was usually sealed off, but there was a low point in the gate that you could literally just walk over, which we did. Okay, I was just checking. We turned on our flashlights. I didn't bother with the ghost app on this hunt because it was a new place for me. I like to just walk around and get the feeling of an unfamiliar territory before I decide upon the app, so now I kept it away and used my flashlight. There were many, many graves, many old ones, some new burials, and all three of us had split up and went our own separate directions the moment we entered the gate to cover the entire grounds quicker. I had went towards the back, Aaron took the middle, and Braden stayed with the graves along the front of the yard. We wandered our positions until we heard Aaron call us over to where he was. There were two graves enclosed in a gate separating them from the rest. There was a normal-sized stone and a rather small one. I threw out the possibilities of them being the owners of the graveyard, and Aaron quickly corrected me. He started to explain the real reason why they wanted to come to that specific graveyard. Because of these two graves, dead center in the middle of the site, but gated off for some strange reason. He had done some research, and sites have said that back in the 1800s, a mother was burned at the stake for the assumption that she was a witch, and had gotten caught practicing witchcraft. Her baby was burned as well, for it was considered a witch too. thus explaining the baby tombstone next to the normal-sized one. That is so tragic. Ugh. It was sad to think about. I felt bad for them, burned at the stake. That's horrible. After giving my condolences, we all went back to our normal positions across the gravesite. I lingered in the back, and there was just crop pasture further behind where the back of the site ended, just dirt. You would probably see the first 30 feet of it and then pitch black darkness for the lack of light. It was eerie, like looking out into the void. I had walked from one back end corner to the other when I heard some kind of calm whistle. That's what I thought I was hearing anyway, up until I slowed my breathing and focused my hearing on that dark void in the distance, where the sound had seemed to be coming from. It stopped as soon as I had noticed it, and I called my friends over to where I was and told them all about it. I remember Braden snorting at me. "You think someone whistled at you?" I was too focused on the void in the distance to care about this dumb comment. I felt like there was something out there. I felt it in my gut. Unlike Braden, Aaron actually believed me and said that we should all wait there to see if it happens again, for all of them to hear. And so we did. We waited for a good 10 minutes before we heard that same similar sound, but this time it was different. It was different because it was closer and we could all hear it better. It sounded as if it were just on the brink of where our flashlights met the start of the dark void. It was so much closer than before. The thing that made us all stop breathing and moving all together was the sound that it really was. It sounded like a woman sobbing to herself. None of us could believe what we were hearing. Surely there wouldn't be a random woman out in the middle of a huge open pasture sobbing to herself. It just didn't make sense. Yet we were too afraid to move. We stayed as still as we could until the sobbing had abrupt pause in it, and as if we had been noticed by whoever it was. We were terrified. It was as if we couldn't see it, but it could see us. Aaron whispered, "Guys," and we both turned only our eyes towards him. He had the most absolute freakiest terror face I have ever seen on anyone. It was as if he were looking at it, and we couldn't. That's what the expression on his face gave from looking at it. The witch. I almost went into a panic. Was it possible that he was actually seeing her? Was it really the freaking witch that we had just stumbled upon? I didn't know what to do or what to say. Braden was the main skeptic of the group, and he had no words or smart remarks as usual. He just kept his face fixed on the void. We all did. Then the most absolute freakiest thing happened. The woman snickered. With that, Aaron was the first one to take off towards the car. Braden and I weren't far behind either. It was one of those panic runs where you couldn't scream, but your legs do the screaming for you. That's how it was all the way to the car. It was probably the most awkward silent sprint but we were only focused on the car. We were terrified. I asked Aaron the moment I started the ignition and drove into the street if he saw her, if he saw what she looked like. He said he didn't, but he could feel what she looked like, and that it was the most terrifying feeling ever. It was one of those things you couldn't explain in detail. He said all he saw were images upon images. And when we were back at his place and calmed down a bit, we started drawing conclusions, and Braden and I, being the skeptics we are, couldn't find any reason for a random woman who would be out in the middle of a dirt crop field crying to herself, by herself, 30 minutes away from town. It was illogical. After doing the thorough research on the site, it surprised me to see that there had once been a rare report on the same mysterious crying coming from not the void, but from the graveyard itself. A man and his wife were going to enter the graveyard during the day to take pictures when they heard the crying. It sounded like it was coming from the far end corner of the graveyard. Assuming that there was a woman grieving over a relative or friend who had passed, they wanted to let her have her moment, so they left. As they were driving by the grave to look back, to go back home or whatever, they didn't see the woman anywhere. They didn't see anyone at all. After doing research as well, they were led to believe that it was the witch who was burned at the stake as well. Was it possible that we had come into contact with the same spirit who was burned at the stake? Did she target Aaron? These are the thoughts that we kept constantly asking each other throughout that night in hopes that the other would have a sure answer for. The main question in particular was the woman's snicker, as if she were laughing at us. Could it have been a possible trap? All thoughts, concerns, questions, and comments are much appreciated, blah, blah, blah. So, interesting. So, in actuality, it was just a disembodied voice, but it was audible to them, which is, no small feat, I guess. But, again...
It's one of those things.
Just one of those things, ladies and gentlemen. These are the legendary stories that surround the old wicked witch idea. And it seems like every place has their legend. Every place seems to have their legend. Now, way back when Josh, who is our friend who collects curiosities and oddities, and he also has the Egyptian cat mummy that I was telling you about. Yeah, curiosities and oddities. Yeah, curiosities. But he actually checked out a graveyard in Minnesota, of all places, that was rumored to have a witch in it. And he said it was really strange. I think, as I recall, he said that that there's this strange flowering ivy that grows over her graves, and everything else is dead, but her grave seems to have this flowering ivy on it, or something to that effect.
Huh.
But he did see footprints in the snow, bare footprints, like bare feet, not big, just like a child's feet.
Wow. Walking
through the snow, and never did see or find anything to that end, but very curious nonetheless. These places, I mean, every place seems to have their legendary witch experience from, back, unfortunately, into that era when, they were doing the witch hunts, and there was such a Puritan,
view on life.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. Thank you for finishing my sentence.
Well, it
did help.
And that's a lot of where all this stuff comes from, though, is the religious, the organized religious part of it,
Mm-hmm.
Even if you look back at Matthew Hopkins, who was the witch hunter in England in like 1650, a lot of his was because of his views on religion. And so, he was a Puritan, as a matter of fact. He was the son of a Puritan clergyman. So, there's a lot of these, burned at the stake, all that, the Salem witch trials, even over, as I said, in England when they were doing, and the Inquisition as well. They just had all these, it was all the religious belief. And as you said earlier, you can't just say, those are the bad guys and we're the good guys, and and that's exactly what this was saying. That's exactly what this Hopkins was saying. So
yeah.
It's one of those things. It's just a dogma. It's just all a dogma.
Now I wanna see if I can find that, which is headstone. It's on display. The one in Minnesota is on display. Hedges headstone. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Jeez. Witch grave, Minnesota. And I want to read the epitaph that's on that headstone. I think it is this one. Yeah, this is the one. I want to read what it was on it because it was very, very profound. Okay. This was what was on the witches, and it's on display apparently in the... Where is it? It's in a public place, because they had so many issues with vandalism. Many of the stone had been lost to vandalism, but Mary Jane's was last known by some to be in the Jackson County Courthouse in Minnesota, and it reads, "My friends, beware as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare yourself to follow me."
Huh.
I just thought, wow, that's really cool. It's
yeah,
really
but
creepy, but cool.
It is, but it just simply means that you too will die.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It doesn't have nefarious.
No.
I don't see anything nefarious about it, but I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
No, that was my point. It was just like, yeah, But it's just kind of weird to be, I guess, when you're walking through a cemetery, you don't. I don't know. Maybe people do, but I don't normally think that one day I'm going to be down there.
Yeah.
But, you just think that you're visiting somebody who passed.
All right.
But then when you're looking at it with such a mortality, it's just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There you are. And that's where I'm going to be someday, too.
Well, people are dying to get in there, so,
Boom, boom. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the kind of entertainment you just can't pay for. And you probably wouldn't anyway. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm trying to think. There was a somebody told me a joke the other day. What's the difference between a cemetery and something else? And for some reason I just can't remember it.
Oh, well, if you remember it, then bring it up, because it'd be a lot funnier. All right, let's did you have something that you wanted to read, Don?
Oh, yeah, I got a couple little short things here,
Well, please read your short things.
Yes. Kidnap babies and the wife of the devil. When Angela DeBarth was captured on grounds of witchcraft in 1275, no one knew the gruesome contents of her confession. No one knew the gruesome contents of her confession would have. Well, that's kind of written out. First, she confessed to having borne a son with the devil, a half-man wolf-snake creature,
Oh, good Lord.
that fed on only babies. The encounters with her victims were similarly chilling. According to residents, babies were mysteriously disappearing within the area with no clue on where they had been headed. Angela recounted the encounters with her victims as a hunt for her son, whose only appetite for babies had to be satisfied. Her wealthy life as a noblewoman in House, France, kind of explained it all. Yeah, crazy people. Probably had syphilis and was dying of brain.
Oh,
anyhow.
yeah.
Let's see here. This one is a whole village swept to extinction. If you happen to house a witch and you know it, be careful not to turn your back on her. The residents of Frenier, L.A., is that Louisiana? That must be Louisiana. Learned this the hard way. They learnt it. This the hard way after they started taking advantage of Julia Brown, a famous witch that they had all come to love. Her magical touch and potions were loved by many, the main reason why she used to be contracted by villagers to make predictions and cast various spells. When she finally got tired of the villagers who were starting to take her for a ride, I wonder if that means figuratively, Julia started issuing terrifying predictions and curses to people who she deemed disrespectful.
Ooh.
When she was about to let go of her life, Julia declared that she would take her whole village with her. Well, on her funeral day in 1915, the whole village, which was attending the burial due to fear, was swept away by a mighty hurricane.
Oh, jeez.
Only 2 people survived. Up to date, developers have not been able to develop that area.
Wow.
Wow, yeah.
That's bizarre, yeah. So that's an interesting one, but that one wasn't so much of a burning at the stake kind of thing, but just people taking advantage of her?
Yeah, they started to take advantage of her, and it doesn't go into detail, but I can imagine not paying her for her readings or her potions or things like that, or things like that. So I would imagine that's what it was. But I'd be pretty mad too, and
right.
And so I mean, if you do something for if you do a service, you should reasonably expect being paid for it.
Yeah, you should, even if you are a witch.
Yeah.
No, I'm only kidding. I think that the idea of ceremonial practices and stuff can be incredibly powerful, and the idea that there is magic isn't there's not a question in my mind that there definitely is. We see, I don't know. I don't want to get into my own experiences a whole bunch, but I have seen things that have happened that defy all logic to me, not just in terms of paranormal, but in terms of seeing things done is all I'm going to say on the subject. But I there is such a power to directed intention.
Right.
And, with a practiced focus, directed intention is incredibly powerful and can literally manifest miraculous results. And I use miraculous as a term to to describe the enormity of what can occur. But it's certainly nothing to be scoffed at. And, I know that in some cases, I think ignorance is bliss, and maybe an ignorance of such things is maybe a safe place for most people. But to mock or discard anything is to me a very dangerous thing, and not because that I think people need to be afraid, but I think a healthy respect for these practices and these beliefs is appropriate.
Well, it could just be something as innocuous as, hey, Dawn, be careful driving home tonight. And you've said that to me several times. And a few of those times I've come across, deer in the road or a cat run across the road or something like that. Mm-hmm. And hitting a deer is, it happens a lot around here. It's not really a big deal, but it can have very bad consequences.
Right. I mean, if a deer would happen to jump at the wrong time, you're eating it through your windshield at whatever speed you're going. I mean, but that's a game over.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just the point. It could be, it could just be something that flashes through your head, and if you choose to believe it, great. Mm-hmm. If you, like you said, if you discard or mock it, then,
then you kind of get what
you could be in trouble.
When you look at the practices, and I've referred to this on the portal before, that I believe prayer is incredibly powerful. And of course, there are many, millions or billions of people that would agree with that. But prayer is in its most simple form, although you're directing it to a divine force, that's not a whole lot different than the idea of ceremonial practices, because in ceremonial practices, they aim their intentions at divine forces too, but it's just as they understand them,
right?
And so that's kind of what I mean is this, that it's good to have a healthy appreciation and respect for both. If anything done with the sake of being evil or causing harm, of course, is never okay, and that's never a good thing. But most people that practice any kind of ceremonial style of worship are have the best interests at heart of everyone and themselves, because most of them adhere to the whole idea of karmic law, that you don't send out negative, because if you do, you're going to get it times 3.
Yeah.
It's the law of threes, or, times 7. Depends on who you talk to.
Right.
But, people have different versions of that, but you don't want to send out negative, because negative comes back to you. And, I just think that all things that people believe in with their heart, it's like my analogy of the cheese, if you believe it's the most sacred cheese, it becomes powerful because you're directing that energy at it. And that's the same thing for anything else. So I'm not sure why I went that direction, but I did, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope hope you enjoyed it. I don't know. I don't know what I was going for and all of that, but
well, we were talking about,
the mocking and stuff.
The mocking and disrespect, the disregard for somebody's, well, we were specifically talking about the services and things like that.
Right.
If you discard them and you don't listen, but then again, it matters on which way you believe, I think. And, okay, if you don't believe in it and you decide to, well, whatever. Well, that's up to you. I mean, you take that chance, you roll those dice.
Right, exactly. So. Very interesting, though. But we're going to continue on here. We hope you guys are enjoying this. What's the chat room doing, Don?
The chat room's... well, Renee's talking about black metal, of course.
Oh.
Drone's in there. Renee's in there. Of course, Pixie joined us tonight. Lady Death. Regular Girl's in there. Oh, gosh, we got lots of people in there. Dory's there. It's kind of nice. Yeah, it's a nice big chat room. Yeah, Renee's talking about music. And hi, awesome. Doc. Yeah, I forgot Doc. Did I forget
Doc's
Doc?
in there.
Yeah.
Okay, great. It's great to see you guys. All of you that are in there. How many are you seeing in there right now?
I'm seeing 20 right now.
Okay, you got 20 there.
And I see 17 likes. That means 3 people.
Drone, did you like? You better have liked.
Yeah. Get in there and like that. You got it, Drone. You're one of MCAT's here too. MCAT, make sure you get there too, because I know you was a little late.
Hey, Pixie, love you too. That's wonderful. Hey, Dory. Yeah. I'm just looking at the names. Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. We loves ya. We loves ya all bunches. And so let's continue our journey into the paranormal here. That was my wicked laugh. I didn't read this one, did I? No, I don't think so.
No, that was
all right. Witch of Ditmar. I don't know if you believe in God. I don't know if you believe in God. Okay. Let's start out with a survey, but okay. I can't even truly be sure of that question myself. What I am sure of is that there are forces, things, or entities out there that we do not understand. Things that can possibly harm us, or at least terrorize us. Things that I would love to stay the hell away from, and I would advise you to do the same. Some people, such as my little brother, do not quite understand that, and every day I'm worried that he will find himself in a situation he cannot escape. The story I'm about to tell you took place between 19 to 25 years ago. That's a bit of a spread.
20 to 25. 19 to 25.
Well, 19 to 25, not 20 to 25. In what used to be a semi-small town called Austin, Texas. What? Small town? Okay. My family, consisting of both my parents, my severely autistic older brother Ben, my baby brother Eric, and my older sister Eileen and myself, had just moved back to South Austin from Bay City, Texas. My parents wanted to be closer to the rest of our family, so they bought an old 3-bedroom, 1-story house in a small neighborhood near South 1st Street. The house itself was ugly and looked like one of those small prisons you would see in some sort of wild West show. But as for the neighborhood, well, I really enjoyed it. There was a park not too far away called Ditmar, and I believe the huge creek that ran through our neighborhood had the same first name. It was a beautiful place. Everyone had big trees in their yard, and woods surrounded us, and I used to love walking around or just going into the creek and relaxing while no one was around. My whole family liked it as well, especially Eric. I was exactly 7 years older than he was, but he was a fast learner, and he was a bit of a free-range child that seemed to never really be afraid of anything. As a baby, he rarely cried, and even when he had a fever so bad he had to be rushed to the children's hospital. He turned 3 in that house, and by then he was already walking, talking, and peeing outside.
Nice.
He learned to potty train by watching Ben, who used to purposely go to the bathroom outside to anger my grandparents. Nice. My parents said he was the quickest one to become potty trained out of all of us. One day I was watching a new show called Boy Meets World on our TV in the living room when I heard Eric talking to someone in our parents' room. I had put the Power Rangers in there for him since that was the only place that had another TV, but I could not hear it playing anymore. What I did hear sounded like the occasional whisper, followed by Eric simply talking loudly. When I walked in to investigate, he was just sitting there on my parents' bed, looking into the mirror at the head of it, and I asked him, "Who are you talking to?" With a slight giggle in my voice, and he turned and looked at me as if I just caught him sneaking the cat inside. He then grinned from ear to ear and replied, "No one." I then said as sarcastically as I could, "Oh, really, no one, huh? Liars don't get cookies from the cookie jar." He jumped up quickly and yelled, Okay, I was talking to Chuck." I was relieved because Chuck had been his imaginary friend since we first moved in. In fact, I think it started when my dad let him watch Child's Play, and instead of being terrified of the creepy little doll monster like a normal person, he became obsessed with it like a little weirdo. And he would watch the movie every year when it came on in October until he turned 14. So I decided to play around with him and say, "No, you weren't. You were talking to someone else." I was expecting him to say something along the lines of "who," and I would quickly respond back, "yourself," and throw a pillow at him and then run away. But instead he did something that sent shivers down my spine. He tensed up, and a look of shock and surprise took hold of his face. And then he looked at the mirror quickly and said, "I didn't tell her. I swear." I did not know how to react. I just stood there dumbfounded. I then hesitated and asked him, "Who were you really talking to?" He looked up at me as if he was going to cry and said, "Mommy ego." Then he pointed at the mirror grimly. My body moved almost robotically as I slowly moved to look at the mirror, and I saw nothing, so I got closer and started squinting my eyes. Suddenly, I saw it, but it was too late. A pillow smacked me across the back of my head. "Eric," I yelled as he bolted out of the door, shouting, "Gotcha." That night, after dinner, was a different story. Eileen and I were washing dishes when my dad walked in to get a soda out of the fridge. There was just something about that name that bothered me. What kind of 3-year-old would come up with that? The whole thing was just disturbing. Therefore, seeing as my dad was the only one person Eric talked to the most in our family, I asked him if he had ever heard him say anything about mommy ego. My dad just looked at me as if that was normal and said, "Oh yeah, I think it's one of his imaginary friends or something." I asked him about her once, and all he said was, "She's a secret or something." And that made me feel a little uneasy. I had to know more information now, and I was still skeptical about the whole thing, and I thought, well, maybe it really is just all in his head, but a part of me wanted some sort of confirmation that mommy ego was just a figment in the child's overactive imagination. The next day I asked Eric about her again, that noise, and a little more sternly while he was watching TV in the living room. He wasn't really fazed by it this time and mostly kept his eyes glued to the TV. "She's the old lady that stays in the attic," he said vaguely. That caught me a little off guard and confused, so I said, "She lives in our attic?" "No, she doesn't live here. Chuck does. She only comes to visit from time to time, and when she does, she sleeps in the attic," he said. "Wait, Chuck lives here?" I asked. "Yeah, he told me this used to be his house, and mommy ego used to visit him too." Now I was really feeling scared, but I had to know one more thing. "So if mommy ego doesn't live here, where does she live?" I said, "Chuck said she lives in the woods by the creek, near the dead goat skeleton. Mommy ego also told me she sees you sometimes hanging out by the creek by the big tree," he said as he looked away from the TV and right at me. A chill went down my spine. To think some creepy old woman was watching me while I was alone. Then it occurred to me, maybe he's messing with me again, and he's been spying on me like some little twerp the whole time. So I asked him if she was visiting right now, and he looked back at the TV and said, "I don't know, go check the attic in the garage and see." "Come with me then," I replied in a sort of sarcastic way. "She doesn't like it when I go in there and bother her," he said. "Because she's not real," I found myself shouting. He just shrugged it off, and that was the end of our discussion. Things got a little weird after that day. It started as strange little events, but grew into something somewhat larger problems. I would come home from school and find all the faucets in the house turned on, or random items in strange places like a pot or a pan in the closet or in the cabinet or the bathroom. Pictures would be crooked, and cupboards and windows would be opened. Sometimes I would find chairs flipped over or sitting in the hallway outside of Eileen's room and mine. Then I started hearing scratching and knocking noises throughout the house. At night, I would sometimes hear what sounded like laughter or crying. The cookie jar kept falling off the shelf and breaking, and my mom would glue it back together and then find it broken again the next day or two, but we were pretty sure it was Eric trying to sneak cookies, at least until the night while watching Unsolved Mysteries with my dad and Eileen. It happened while Eric was at a friend's house. The even creepier part was it happened right when someone on the show said they heard a crash. My mom still blamed him, though. She seemed to be the only one oblivious to the strange happenings going on in our house. Even my dad knew and was a little worried. About 2 years had passed, and we kind of had just gotten used to everything when something strange happened, and it would creep us out. But no one really got hurt, and it just seemed somewhat normal. We had put one of those large, deep freezers in the garage directly under the attic as well, and it was where we kept most of our frozen foods. One day I decided I was going to get a Hot Pocket, and as I grabbed one, I shut the freezer. I had an odd feeling, like I was being watched. Then I remembered Eric telling me about how mommy ego stays in the attic. I slowly looked up, but to my relief, all I saw was the opening that led to the crawl space and the usual light that never turned on or even knew if it worked. I shrugged it off and went to the door leading out. I opened the door and I flipped the lights off, but as I did, my body froze in fear. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw a light coming down from the attic. I gained enough courage to turn my head and see, sure enough, the attic light was on. I didn't know whether I should dart inside or shut the door, or check out what was going on. Curiosity ended up beating out fear, and I cautiously approached the freezer to look into the attic. and I will never forget the day. As I carefully lurched forward to look up at the attic light, or up at the light there, looking right back down at me with her chin resting on the right edge of the hole, was the head and face of a grinning old woman. Her hair was pulled back and tied up in a bun, and her face had more wrinkles than a shriveled prune. She had no teeth in her sinister grin, just black gums that seemed to reflect the light. I could not see her nose too well because of the shadow cast upon her face by the light in the background, but what I could see as clear as day, and what I still see in every nightmare I have, is her eyes. Where there should have been white, there was yellow, and instead of a pupil and an iris, she simply had large black dots. Luckily, my bladder was empty, because had it not, I would have easily needed to change. I ran out screaming so hard my voice went hoarse. I wish I could say that was the last time I saw that face. I was on edge for 3 weeks after that encounter. I would not go in the garage. I jumped at every noise, and I avoided going to the creek to relax. Those same 3 weeks, not a single strange event happened. Then one day I decided to visit my friend JC, who lived down the street. We talked about the normal things, but then I decided to ask her if she had seen or heard anything strange in her house. Surprisingly, she did. We talked about what we had in common, and about what one of us experienced, but the other did not. When I brought up the name Mommy Ego, she froze. Her little sister, who was only 2 years older than Eric, had brought up that name before. Apparently, a year ago, she claimed Mommy Ego helped her get a frisbee out of the tree in the front yard. She said she had not heard much after that, but now she was a little bit worried. I went home that night and went straight to my room, and although I thought a lot about what JC had told me, and eventually sleep overtook me and I passed out. I woke the next morning to a scream and found that both Eileen's bed and mine were shaking violently. As soon as my mom and dad burst through the door, it stopped. They calmed us down and gave us breakfast. My mom did not believe us, of course, but my dad did. Me and my sister talk a lot about that day as well, but when I saw my little brother, he walked up to me and said, "Mommy Ego is mad at you," then walked away. I felt sick to my stomach. This thing had left us alone for so long, and now it was mad at me? Why? Is it because I disturbed her in the garage? So many questions and worries passed through my head. But had she truly been mad at me? That was her only retaliation because things went kind of back to normal. Sure, the occasional strange event, thing, or noise would happen, but it was the same stuff we had gotten used to before. Another year had passed, and my sister and I wanted to have a sleepover with some friends from school. Both my parents said yes, and so it was planned. They all brought their stuff to school so we could leave straight from there, and since we were all walking distance from each other and our school, we simply walked to my house afterwards and had fun. We watched movies, did makeup, curled our hair, and painted our nails, the stuff teenage girls do. At about 10 p.m. that night, we got a loud knock at the door. We weren't really doing much, just gossiping and playing the board game Sorry, and I got up to answer it, and there was Eric standing there, and he looked very upset. Before I could ask him what was wrong, he yelled, "Stop it! I know it was y'all at my window trying to scare me. I heard y'all laughing," then stormed off back across the hall to his room. Before I could even respond, I didn't think much of it, to be honest. I was too preoccupied with my friends, so I simply shrugged it off and went back to my room. We had all fallen asleep about 2 hours later, but for some reason, no matter how tired I felt, I just could not pass over into the world of my dreams. Then I heard a knocking on my window. Baffled at what it could be, I simply remained in bed in hopes that it was just something being blown by the wind. Then it happened again, a little louder this time. Then a realization came to my head. It was probably my stupid little brother trying to get some sort of vengeance on us for something we didn't do. I angrily got up and went to the window, and as I opened the blinds and prepared to tell him to go to bed or Mom and Dad would become involved in his little prank, my heart leaped to my throat and terror took over. Standing in the window was the old woman with her hair in curlers. She had a toothless grin and yellow eyes with large black dots for pupils fixed on me. My body worked almost mechanically. I shut the blinds and slowly crawled into bed, and I just stared at the window. Then I heard a tap, as if someone was tapping their long fingernails against the glass. I quickly hid under the covers and just listened to the tapping until exhaustion overtook me and I slipped into unconsciousness. I do not know when the tapping stopped, but in the next morning, I was the last to awaken and no one else seemed to hear anything of the sort. I began to question whether or not I was dreaming, and honestly, when I think back to that day, I still sometimes do. About 1 more year would pass, and my dad had received a promotion at his job. Since he was going to be making a lot more money, we decided it was time to move. We did not really notice anything weird around this time because we were so focused on packing and getting everything ready. Our house in a new neighborhood was in its final stages of construction, and we were going to leave as quickly as we could. Well, on the final few days of us being in the house, it started storming really badly. The creeks flooded over, and we had a non-stop tornado watch, and we had the moving truck, but we could barely load it and make trips back and forth due to the bad weather. The last day, the rain let up a little bit, and we had managed to move most of our stuff to the new house. I was so excited for this move to finally be over that I could not fall asleep that night. I was thinking about the new house and how I would soon have my very own room in a place with 2 floors when I heard our front door open and close quickly. I looked at the clock and it read 2:30 a.m. Who the hell was up and about at this time? I got up and went outside to investigate, and as I walked out into the front yard, I saw Eric running down the street. I had no idea what he was doing, so I angrily yelled out for him to come back. But he kept running, and I was barefoot and a little tired, but I spontaneously chased after him, thinking about how much trouble I'm going to make sure he is for sneaking out. He turned down a street that was little more like a cul-de-sac with a very large oak tree at the center. I turned down it too, and I saw him jump into a space between 2 houses that led to the creek. I remembered how flooded it was down there due to the storm, so I broke into a dead sprint. I nearly fell down the slope that led down to the water when I finally caught up to him. But just as I took a breath to yell at him, I realized he was not the only child there. He was standing at the water's edge with 5 other children standing around him in a half circle. They were all dirty, soaking wet, ragged clothes, and their flesh was as pale as the moon itself. As I got closer, I could see their glossy, clouded eyes fixed on the water. Then, just like that, I blinked, and they were gone, only to be replaced by 5 tires with a wooden cross set in the center. Eric was crouched down at this point, examining the curious structures. "What are you doing?" I yelled. I don't know," he said, confused. "You don't remember running down here?" I shouted again. "No, I swear," he whined back. I believe him, and I really did. "Let's go home. We are leaving tomorrow," I told him, and we walked home, not saying a word to each other. A few weeks went by, and we were enjoying our new home. We had not been able to explore the neighborhood much, though, mainly because it would rain like every other day. One particular night, it stormed so badly there was a flash flood warning, and our power went out. And I lit a candle in my room and read a book, but I figured after about an hour it would be better to just sleep until it was over. I awoke the next day to my mom telling me she had some sad news. JC's sister had snuck out during the storm and had been found in the creek. She had drowned. Wow. So, that's a horrible event. If that's true, that is absolutely horrible.
Why did the woman seem to be benevolent to the kids?
I don't know.
Of course, possibly until the end of the story.
Right, to entice them to, when the storm came to.
But did not like his sister. Not at all.
She didn't like those kids snooping around.
Those goddamn kids in my yard again.
Get out of my yard. I don't know.
You kids.
I don't, it's, again, ladies and gentlemen, I can't vouch for any of the authenticity of any of these stories.
But they're darn interesting.
They are interesting. They're good stories, and at the very least, they're very entertaining. Could it be real? Yeah, I guess. It sure could be. What does it mean?
Who knows?
Who knows? But I mean, it's kind of right there in the narrative that, clearly if this was a true story, it was some kind of being that needed to feed on that life force of these kids. So, and, I don't know. No, I mentioned it before, but there's the idea that, and I heard a demonologist speak to this once. He said that the reason for demons to want to latch on to people is because they're basically in a state of constant starvation because they're out of the divine light. Mm-hmm. And so they need to feed on that through the people. And perhaps this is a demonic thing. Perhaps it's something else that is also in a state of constant hunger, and the only thing that satiates that is the life force of something or someone else. But, yeah, very, very strange.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Crazy.
I know, right? Telling you, it's all kooky and paranormal. But that's why you tune in every time we have a show.
And thank God.
And thank God you do, because we sure love that you guys are here. And
Wow.
I hope you guys enjoyed that story. That was a hell of a long one.
That was a hell of a long one, yeah.
It was. That was not a story, ladies and gentlemen. I just read you a miniseries.
No doubt.
That was a weekend event right there. But cool story nonetheless.
Yeah, but I want to know more about Chucky. Chuck.
Yeah, was Chuck an actual person?
Yeah,
That's a good point.
Yeah, well, as the story goes, the brother said that Chuck used to live there.
Yeah, he used to live there, so it was...
And Mama Ego came and visited him, too.
Right. Now, was Chuck another kid that had drowned prior?
Oh, good question.
Is that
was
the
one
spirit
of
of another prior victim?
Oh, it's starting to sound like a Blair Witch issue.
Right? That's what I'm saying. I don't know. You know, to this day, I've never seen Blair Witch.
Really?
Yeah, I never have.
It's only worth watching once.
Well, that's what I hear, and it was probably more amazing when it first came out. But
Yeah.
I can't look at cameras pointed at the ground a whole bunch, because to me
they
that
were
just makes me
pointed all
nauseous.
over.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. It's just like that whole shaky camera thing. Like, let's get away.
It lends authenticity.
it's like having Michael J. Fox be your cameraman.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry, that was mean. God,
Hold
forgive
on,
me.
let me get you in frame.
Forgive me that. Forgive me, Lord. I have.
Can you put some of that Parmesan cheese on there?
I actually, I actually love Michael J. Fox, and I'm certainly sorry that he's going through the Parkinson's thing he's going through. But
He's still a good guy.
yeah, he's an amazing guy. He's really an amazing person, and I've lost very dear people to me that had Parkinson's, and it's not really a laughing matter, but that was just a free and cheap and easy joke, and I'm sorry if I offended anybody, but it wasn't my intent. But, they put a microphone in front of me, and look what happens.
The crazy comes
You just
out.
never know. Yeah, I mean, it's just like from here to here, there's like, what, a inch gap?
Yeah.
And there's like no filters.
There's no filters. There's no room for filters.
There should be like a buffer of about three filters there.
You got a pop screen on it, and that's pretty much it.
It's just like from here out. It's like a funnel going out.
It doesn't get past the end of the nose. Boop, boop.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have to hang a sensor right here.
It turns red and green when your thoughts coming out of your mouth. You're like, red, green, red, red, red.
Red light, red light. Stop the flow. Stop the airflow. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just the fun of it.
That's crazy. The Boleskine house.
Oh, are you reading now?
Left with a curse.
Are you taking over? Is that what's going on here? Did you just steal the spotlight?
No, I'm just borrowing the camera.
All right, by all means, I'll give it to you full screen.
A sorcerer's former house should
Hold on, Don. Let me go to Beard Vision.
Gosh.
Ladies and gentlemen, Beard Vision. Go ahead.
Okay, I got a little stray one over here. Yeah.
All right, don't kill it.
There we go. A sorcerer's former house should be a no-go zone.
Oh, wow.
Not even as an emergency shelter in case you're stranded. 2 occupants of the Boleskine house, once occupied by the famous witch Aleister Crowley of London, learnt this lesson the hard way. I love that word. Why can't they say learned?
Oh, because they learnt.
They learnt it.
It's a little stronger.
The first to get hit was Crowley's own housekeeper, whose children had their life cut short mysteriously. The Mad Witch then went ahead to brag of how one of his sober employees got drunk and nearly wiped away his entire family. After Crowley left, the next inhabitants found a house still possessed by the witch's dark energy. The army major, who immediately moved into the house, pierced his own head with a bullet from a shotgun. Okay, that's a big bullet. It's not called a bullet, but okay.
It's a slug.
It's a slug. The next owner left in a hurry after hearing unexplainable creaks, squeals, and ghostly noises. In 2015, the whole house went up in flames with no logical reason. Weird.
Is that the whole thing?
Yeah, these are the short ones.
Mr. Crowley that's one previous homeowner I don't think anybody'd want to follow.
That's a hard act to follow.
I mean, that's one you don't want to follow.
That's true.
It's not
that's true.
Of course, you couldn't live up to the legend because that guy was absolutely out there.
Yeah.
Was he an evil genius? I don't know. Was he evil at all? I don't know. But I'm telling you, the stories of this man's life are just no joke. But I sure would not be the next one to move in.
No, it's like Demon House. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Did you watch that, by the way?
No, I haven't gotten a chance to. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of time, but and plus it's probably not something I should watch during the day.
Oh, right. You should probably wait till it's really dark and light a candle. And
the problem is when it's really dark, I'm usually trying to sleep.
Well, that never works anyway, so just go ahead.
That's true. I might as well just fall asleep to an evil movie, which is nothing new, actually.
Uh-huh.
She turned sailors into animals. The legend of Circe is rather an intriguing one in history. According to records, this witch had a peculiar habit of turning sailors passing by her home into animals such as wolves and lions. A vivid encounter recorded was between her and Captain Odysseus. Okay, now I remember. As per historical records, Circe turned Odysseus' men into swine, but Odysseus managed to save himself from her spell using a magical plant he was given by the gods. The captain went ahead and made a deal with Circe, where she was going to house them for a year before they sailed back to their motherland, betting his hope on an agreement that the witch was not going to betray him. Luckily for them, they went back a year later in full human form.
Mm.
So that's, of course,
legendary.
Yeah, Homer's Odysseus and the Legend of Troy and things like that, because that happened on the way home from Troy in that saga.
Sure.
So, okay. Taken to the afterlife by a witch's poison.
Ooh.
This American story actually has some truth in it. According to historical records, the Bell Witch was a famous witch who used to haunt John Bell Sr., a wealthy American, back in 1817. During her occasional visits, the witch would haunt Bell's family and often swear at the family that she was going to do something terrible in the near future. It did not take long before John Bell Sr. found lying cold, the cause of his demise being poisoning. According to the witness, the Bell Witch actually poisoned him by placing a bottle of poison in disguise as a medicine bottle. Sadly, the old man took the poison, thinking it was his normal drug.
Uh-huh. That's right. The Bell Witch story is quite legendary. In fact, there's a cave on that property as well. And it's still, I mean, it's still owned. I don't know if it's still by the Bell family, but it's privately owned, and apparently they allow tours through every once in a while. But yeah, pretty creepy.
She cursed a king and queen with storms. Around early 1590, King James VI from England got married to Anne from Denmark, a young lady who was bewildered and frightened by the subject of dark magic. However, the new couple was not going to live in harmony for long. Apparently, they were already the target of one witch, Agnes Sampson.
Ooh.
Records show that on 2 different occasions, King James and his wife experienced treacherous storms as they were sailing into Scotland. This quick conclusion was that the witch had cursed Mother Nature, and ordered her to create a storm that almost ended the lives of the king and queen. When the witch hunt list came out, Agnes Sampson was on the top of the list. It didn't take long before she was apprehended and taken to King James, who showed no mercy. Records show that Agnes was severely tortured after she was strangled and burnt to her demise.
Craziness. That's all craziness.
Yeah, that's just before the time of Matthew Hopkins, the witch hunter. Yeah, that's probably part of the ball of wax that started the melting of the witch sagas.
Ooh.
Deadly cat from hell.
Wow.
Okay. England once again hosted the most unapologetic witch in history, Agnes Waterhouse, and her encounters with her victims were not happy ones. According to Agnes's testimony at her trial, she copulated with the devil whom she worked for. God.
Wow.
That's
That's not a good start to a trial, I don't think.
I admit it, yes.
Her lawyer just, I quit.
I was like, I told her to shut up. I'm out of here. She also claimed that she had a cat named Satan that she used to use to send to exterminate her enemy's livestock. But the strangest of all is how she used gruesomely cut short. How she used to gruesomely cut short her victims' lives. Apparently, she used her cat for the dirty job, and for those who she couldn't send into the afterlife, she cursed instead. She swore not to disown Satan during her confession. However, before her execution, she said that she had once failed to perform the grisly acts on a man because of his strong faith in God. So there you go. Apparently, dogmas work.
Yeah, well, faith is a powerful thing, like I said.
That is true.
And if you have a strong faith, then nothing can touch you.
A slave witch invokes her master's children to fits and screams.
Ooh.
In 1692, Salem, the colonial Massachusetts, was treated to a spectacle by Reverend Samuel Parris's daughter and niece, starting to have when his daughter and niece started having uncontrollable fits, screams, and bizarre rants. The logical explanation was that the devil was invoked in all of these misfortunes befalling the Reverend. The Reverend's daughter and niece immediately identified a slave, an old lady, and a beggar as the cause of their mysterious fits. When they were interrogated, the slave confessed that she was actually working with the devil and among a consortium of witches hunting the reverends in the towns. The court, basing its judgment on this decision, instructed for the execution of the slave witch. Now, see, that's...
The thing is that the thing that is important to remember is that confessions were not like, did you do it? Oh, you did? Okay, let's write this down. It was by
serious
virtue
duress.
of pain, agony, just the most inhuman types of questionings. Questioning was a torture session. I mean, that's what what it was. And so, the human body mind can only handle so much before you would admit to whatever the hell somebody said, just to make it stop, just to make that agony stop. So, it's just heartbreaking that, she confessed. Well,
she confessed under duress. Serious stress.
That's not a confession. That's a compulsion. They were compelled to say whatever they wanted because the horrifying truth was they were being brutalized in horribly, imaginative ways. Just terrible.
Reminds me of that scene in Monty Python Search for the Holy Grail when they're trying that witch.
Oh yeah. What floats? A small stone.
A small stone. A duck.
Yeah, a duck. Right. That was definitely classic cinema.
Oh goodness.
But yeah, it's unfortunate when you hear confession, it sounds like it somehow corroborates the claim, but it doesn't. It was just these were brutalizations until somebody said what they wanted them to say. So they're by no means truthful in reaching that conclusion, and so I don't know. That's the tragedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She sucked the life out of his toe. Okay. This act was committed by a witch named Chedepi, who is dreaded amongst the Indians. According to the residents, Chedepi had a common habit of visiting households at night, riding a tiger under the moonlight and sucking the life out of her victims. This was the case of an unlucky man who, after getting into bed for a good night's sleep, woke up to find his soul already in the afterlife. According to neighbors and a few witnesses, The witch visited the unlucky man that night, where she sucked his soul through his toes. Residents claim that whoever is inside the home that she visits never hears her get in, move around, or suck any souls out. More reasons why these deaths are usually silent.
Must use a shop vac, I'm thinking.
Don't let your feet dangle over the side of your bed.
Yeah, that's...
I don't care if the room's spinning. Don't put your foot on the floor. Wow.
Yeah, you're right. Regla says, Brent, that was in the old world order. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, but, as far as order is concerned, I don't know if that's the right term, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's horrid, but, again, people were brutalized to get these confessions.
And before the age of Freud, and I say Freud because, it's proven. Before the age of Freud, everything that ever happened was because of a demon, a devil, or Satan.
Right.
And so, it was just easier to blame something, an unexpected something, like somebody suddenly dying from like a heart attack, because nobody can... What's a heart attack? Oh, the devil must have took him.
Yeah.
Well,
that's demon.
It's that witch down the way.
Right, yeah.
And so, it was just so much easier to explain it that way, but instead of just going, well, he was old, he died.
Right. It was just the result of a lot of people being very afraid and
superstitious,
throwing a whole lot of power at some people to handle things that they couldn't understand.
Yeah, true enough. True enough.
It's like the ancients would use terms like magic pretty openly. It's like, well, whatever you couldn't explain, suddenly it was magic. And, like I said before, I really believe there is real magic, and there's, it is absolutely amazing and miraculous. But, the idea that it's, any kind of supernatural thing has to be the work of a devil, I mean, in these times that are referred to, I you just think if Jesus showed up and it was during like the Inquisition, he would have been, not any better off than he was the first run, because he would have been some kind of devil guy or something,
Right, no doubt.
Yeah.
He's an incubus.
He was incubus, yeah. It would just, if somebody walked on water now, it would be, first of all, there would be trolls saying that it was fake, and there'd be a bunch of people, oh, it's fake, I could see the strings.
Well, how many times has David Blaine walked across water?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they kind of cheapen it.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, just give me a beer, I can do anything.
Yeah,
or rather, hold my beer, watch this.
But if you look at some of these old, old miraculous claims of biblical legend, if they were to happen, back in the 1600s, that people would have been getting pitchforks and torches and going after them, saying that it was blasphemy, and I don't know. It just makes me wonder. And I don't know why I brought that up, but it just occurred to me, like, if truly amazing and miraculous things happened, and would certain people be capable of recognizing them for the for the wonder and beauty that they are?
Yeah, true.
Or would they still defer to their dogmas and renounce it? I don't know. Just came to mind.
Lady Death says, how many a-holes do you know in life? There has to be just there has to be just a-hole ghosts, and not all are demons.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a great point. I mean, and it's not. I mean, if somebody's life ends tragically as a result of confession, and that is the definition of unfinished business. I mean, if that was me, hell yeah, I'd be making everybody miserable. I'd be like, oh, hell no, it's time to write that check, and it's going to take a while. So, I mean, you know what I mean?
You like torture? I'll show you torture.
So, I mean, I would, that would be the definition of unfinished business. So, it doesn't surprise me if some of these are actually these people that were brutalized.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there was one over by you, Don.
One by me?
No, let's see. Yeah, it was over by you.
What do you mean by me? How do you know that?
Its head, a dot appeared on the radar on this one. But it did not appear on this one, so I don't know.
So don't tell me they're by me.
Well, I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, I don't want to get sucked through a portal. I'm checking out the planchette again, making sure it's on the wall.
Newsflash: this is a show called The Paranormal Portal,
and you're sitting dead in the center.
Don thought he was showing up for Quilts and Wonder.
Quilts and Wonder.
That show's next, Don. This is Paranormal Portal.
Oh, God, you gave me a little chill with that.
I did. Yeah. See, that's your spike right there. It was over there.
Yeah, that's a big spike,
probably giving you a nice neck rub.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Don needs a nice ghostly massage.
I got to get the hairs down on my leg now.
Oh. It's okay. I'm just saying. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if these things are worth the code that they're written with, but they're fun. These are fun, but it's no correlation between the two at all.
Yeah.
But again, I think that the on my desktop, since it's connected by Ethernet, it's probably got the Wi-Fi antenna on standby, and so it's not using it. This one is the laptop is running on Wi-Fi, so that laptop Wi-Fi is active, and so is that the reason? I don't know. I guess I should have two laptops both running it and see if it correlates. That probably would be a better A/B test, but. Anyway, you're seeing it live here on the portal as we're using the Ghost app, and no words have come up on this one. However, excuse me, on the laptop, there's been... Ooh, you know what word was said about the time it was by you?
What?
Gateway.
No! See,
it does
I told you.
I swear to God.
I just said I don't want to be sucked through a portal, didn't I?
You did. It's funny that it said gateway.
God dang it.
That's awesome. Don, are you psychic, Don?
Oh, no, I'm psychoed.
And before that, a date was given at 7:36 p.m. That was 1966.
What time? Wait, hold on. What?
At 7:36 p.m. 1966.
7:36 p.m.
Yep.
1966. Hey, Slauson ends it. It's S. So in the chat room, it's Slauson 1966. Were you born at 7:36 by any chance?
Wow. That's
Wouldn't that be coincidence?
That is interesting. But I'm just reporting it to you, ladies and gentlemen. That is over here. I guess I can use my camera to show the other. Oh, wait, I should put on the live camera.
Did it say 7:36 p.m. or a.m.? Did it just say 7:36?
That's over here on this one is where that is coming from. That I have it running over here as well on the second laptop. So that's where I'm getting that information. And that one did just show a spirit next to Don.
Renee was born in 1966.
Well, there you go.
Renee, were you born at 7:36
p.m.?
p.m.
Yeah. So anyway, these are the things that are coming through our spirit detectors.
Wow.
Kind of fun though, isn't it?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Renee was born 9/9 of 66.
Wow.
Flip those nines over, baby.
Oh. There you have it.
Wow.
So, anyway.
Oh, goodness.
This is the Paranormal Portal, and we are getting all kinds of paranormal up in here, so what do you do? So let's continue the journey.
Yeah.
You okay there, Dan? Dark entity or a witch?
Oh, please, go ahead.
I don't think I read this one, no. I have seen and been around strange things, paranormal things, and none of them scared me as bad as this did. I was living in Baxter Springs, Kansas at a time, a really small town. And this one is entitled A Dark Entity or a Witch. Excuse me, let me clear my throat. There we go. It was a few days before Thanksgiving of 2004, and I had family that had come from out of town. My younger cousin, which I will call her B, was and has been into anything paranormal. So my older brother and I were telling her about this witch's grave that we went and seen, and until this day, I can remember what was written on her headstone. This is what it says. Oh, wow. This is funny. It says, "Remember me as you walk by, as you are now, so once was I. Prepare for death and follow me." Well, I don't think that's quite what it said, but that's what the person says. But it's funny because I just brought that up a while ago.
Yeah, you just talked
from
about
that
it.
headstone
Yeah.
from Minnesota witch's grave. All right. Well, she wanted to see the grave and trace it, so my older brother, my uncle, and my identical cousins all went to show her, and my uncle the grave. Well, my twin cousins decided that they were going to dance on her grave despite what anyone said to them.
That's smart.
Nothing happened that first night. About a week after they left, I kept seeing this dark figure in the doorway of my bedroom. He was tall, and he was darker than dark. My mom had also seen him in our driveway by the gate. Her bedroom was by the living room, and from her room you can see it everything. From then on, strange things had happened, but I would like to know if he was just giving us a warning or if they made him mad, because about a month into the new year, my uncle was diagnosed with lung cancer. He never smoked a day in his life because he was allergic to cigarette smoke. And then soon after that, my stepdad had a mild stroke. I moved out of the house, and they were telling me how the keys would just fly off the wall and land in the middle of the living room. When my son, he was a newborn at the time, went and stayed with them, he would stare at the attic entrance as if he was waiting for someone to come down from up there, and he would cry if left alone. Well, to skip a few years down, my mom had a horrible stroke while living there, and she is now paralyzed on the right side of her body. And she and my stepdad are now divorced as well. Well, that's horrible. I was just curious if anyone has anything similar to this or know what it was that was causing my family and I such turmoil. All comments are welcome. Now, I think it needs to be said, because people assume that if anything bad happens, it must be paranormally induced. I mean, people into the paranormal would say, well, that's a reaction to, mocking the grave or right, dancing on the grave of that person. I think sometimes bad things just happen, and I don't think that it's fair to give something credit for doing it. Like, sometimes
blame something.
Right. I mean, we don't know anything about the health of this family. I mean, maybe they've got a history of strokes and issues like that, and coronary issues, and cancer's kind of anybody's guess. It's probably more a result of chemicals and glyphosate than a dark entity. But you know what I mean? It's just to lump everything into one. If it all happened in a week, then it's like, well, that's really creepy and weird, and that sounds odd. But it happened over a series of a year, right, or more. It's like hard to quantify those things as just paranormally induced. Right. Bad things happen. People don't get along. They get divorced. It's never easy, and it's never happy when bad things happen. And of course, it's hard to process. But I don't think that it's probably a good idea to say that it's the result of something dark and negative.
Yeah, no.
And if only because I think that those kind of things add fear, and by adding fear, you're adding power to something that doesn't need more power.
Yeah.
We don't need to make the
life to those vibrations.
Right, exactly. And that's a great point. Once you acknowledge those kind of things and claim that knowledge, then it empowers them, because you are creating an energy flow to that thing. We are creators. We are energetic beings of divine energy, and we have the ability to do amazing things. And one of the things that we do, and usually subconsciously, is we give strength and power to a lot of negative things through our fear. So be careful about those kind of ideas and those kind of thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. That's my best takeaway from that is, could it be? Maybe, but it wasn't like all these things happened in a week. They happened over a drawn-out period of time, and it could be anything. Could just be the way things went.
Now I'm paranoid. I'm looking for
It's fine, Don. The radar's clear.
The radar's clear. Thank God. It was within 2 meters of me.
No, it was probably almost on your lap. The way it looked.
Great. I've got a working girl as a spirit over here.
Just leave a 5 on the desk before you leave.
No. That's not the way this one works.
You didn't get a spiritual lap dance, did you? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Just keep my mouth shut.
I'm just, I went full pig there. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to. That was just classy. Sorry. I get a little punchy as the night goes on,
Oh,
as you
wow.
can tell. If you've been listening to the portal for a while, you'll know that as the night goes, it gets a lot more stupid.
Oh, wow. Yeah, but those are usually on our late night shows, Fridays and Saturdays.
Well, it depends on the day you've had before that,
so.
Don.
Yeah, I guess you're correct.
Yeah, it just depends on the day, but there you have it.
Oh, man. Oh, another spike.
Is Doc falling asleep? What?
There's another screw Doc.
Screw Doc.
There's another spike on the screen.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, on the other one.
Oh, the other one. Did a word come up? It says refund.
I ain't got a 5 on me. What do you mean refund?
It says refund. I swear to God, it says refund.
Don's lap dance was so bad he has to pay her. Wait, that's the way it goes anyhow, isn't
I swear
it?
to God, it says refund, and then under that it says tractor.
What the hell does that mean?
I don't know.
Refund a tractor?
Because you were a drag.
Oh! God.
That's awesome. It says refund. What are the odds of that, Don? I just said slap it a 5. That is brilliant. Holy Christ.
Wow.
Maybe there is something to this thing.
What do you mean by tractor?
It says refund. That's so awesome.
What? Why would I? Why do I have to refund you?
Because you
Now
got the lap
now
dance.
I'm talking to it. I'm like,
Oh, yeah. Good. You're encouraging it. It said refund. That is so perfect. I mean, what are the odds?
I think the frankincense did the opposite of what we wanted tonight.
I know.
Wow.
There you go.
Here's a refund.
Only here on the Paranormal Portal, ladies and
God.
gentlemen. That is so hilarious. It says refund. I mean, what are the odds? That's got to be like pulling perfectly folded clothes from your dryer. You know,
I wish.
What are the odds of that doing that at the same exact time? It's not like it's Facebook that always listens to you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh my God.
Oh goodness,
That's
that
so
was
funny. That's
Oh,
hilarious. So it's got a sense of humor, Don. So you're in good shape.
So in the show notes, you should make sure that mention that Don owes a refund on a tractor.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
So the next one is called The Witch.
Wow. Okay.
Well, that was a creative title. All right. Ghost, aberrations, witches all seem to fall in the same paranormal grouping. So here is a witch story. Summer came like a wanted pleasure. It always does. That's my favorite pleasure of the year. The sun gently caressing down as dew began to absorb into a rich earth.
Is this a spooky story?
I don't know. It's starting out like a...
Bow chick wow wow. Sorry.
You're still having your lap dance, huh?
Let's go.
All right. Blazing green shards of grass fought to cover the dying brown jilted lawns, and the elliptical spud-shaped buds unveiled organic hands outstretching to catch the golden rays. Yes, summertime, a beautiful time, a time of evil. I don't think that, this is the problem. It looks like it's really well written, which is always a red flag for me. All right. A child sees life through a different set of eyes. A child sees life through a different set of eyes, and I was no different. My father had been very ill and was dying, but I did not know. He was a pilot and was gone most of the time, so when he came home to stay, I was happy and did not know that there was another reason. Nor did I care. I had my dad home, and that was all that mattered to me. The Adobe House we moved into was a small Spanish village in northern Mexico. Vallecitos, and it was Vallecitos, Vallecitos. It was a town of about 320 people, all of which worked in the local lumber mill that was owned by my uncle. The house itself was 2 stories and had a wooden veranda on the back and the right side. The house was very old and still had a wooden stove as a heat source and to cook on. There was no running water, so an outhouse was your only option, and baths were a clawfoot tub that you would fill with pots of water you heated on the stove. The backyard was a tangled remnant of what used to be a beautiful orchard of apples and cherries. You could tell by the scantily built houses that adorned the remainder of the town that the large Adobe House was owned by someone of prominence, and although times had been harsh to it, it was still a majestic beauty about its confines, and I wondered why it had remained empty so soon. I would find out. Old-school Spaniards are very devout in religion and also have a strong sense of belief in the occult. So it made sense when I was informed that a witch had owned the house, and after she died, no one would as much as step foot on the property. Hence the lack of maintenance even in the orchard. The decaying once white wooden fence posts that staggered alongside the roadside in front of the house reminded me of a small soldier standing in some type of ragtag formation, the rotting wood giving each one its own personality. A small creek ran along the left side of the house and was surrounded by dozens of small trees. The trees themselves reached across to grasp one another and formed a fissure where the sparkling water gurgled and splashed its way down, only to reach a small river that cut through the center of the town, dividing north from south, poor from poorer. A small bridge leaped over the gap and looked as if it frowned, with the sides of its mouth creased from one side to the other. This is so poetically written. It was on the first night that I felt something was not right. There was a terrible scratching sound emitting from beneath the floorboards of the house, and the lights would flicker on and off. My father assumed that a family of mice lived under the house, and with this place being so old, the wiring is faulty. I accepted that and went upstairs, climbed up into the top bunk of my old bunk bed, and snuggled in and went to sleep. A strong smell of feces and rotten eggs assaulted me throughout the night, and I found myself pulling the blankets up multiple times as they seemed to wander to my feet. An eeriness echoed with the scraping of limbs from the large tree behind the house, and I felt as if I was being watched. The hair on my arms was raised, and a brisk coldness lumbered in the air. The next day my mother made fresh tortillas laden with melted butter and honey for breakfast. I had never had food cooked on a wood stove, and it was marvelous. The memories of the night slipped away. The tree behind the house had a rope descending from a large outstretched branch, and I watched as it swayed back and forth in the warm summer breeze. A small green apple was visible just out of the branch, and with my use of the rope, I was able to climb up to the limb. And as I reached out for the apple, I felt a hard shove across my back. Clawing to save myself from certain doom, I was able to grab the rope to slow my fall and ended up with just a bruised leg. Still being young, I started to cry and was very soon met by my mother and brother, who ran out of the house to see what was wrong. Other things began to happen, not just me, but to my family. My sister swears an old lady was looking at her in the bedroom mirror, and our family dog suddenly attacked my brother. My mother could never find her keys and always yelled at me for playing with them, which I never did. None of the kids would come to our house and play. They said their parents would not let them, as the house was cursed and a witch lived there. So, as a young boy, I was hurt, but something inside told me they were right, so I did not push the issue. Everyone in the family knew something was wrong, but we did not talk about it. Dad's health was getting worse, and we really had nowhere to go. So we just ignored the strange behavior in the house. Summer was coming to an end, and we had been in this house for several months. Besides the eerie things that had happened so far, and the occasional sighting of an old lady in the mirror, life seemed rather usual. That was all about to change. It was late on a weekday night, and once again I was having a tug-of-war with my blanket, when a loud scream came from downstairs. I could hear my father jump out of bed, and with my mother close behind. Suddenly the house seemed to shake. The bunk bed began to raise up and slam down, up and down, up and down. I began to cry, and my brother yelled out. My sister was screaming for help in the other room, and everything started to twist. Enter the witch.
Ooh, Suki.
The side door of the veranda near our bunk bed suddenly slammed open, and a dark creature resembling an old lady had appeared. The smell of rotten eggs and death became strong, half of putrid yellow seeming to glow. This is hair of putrid yellow seeming to glow, rather. And the eyes and mouth were darker than the night itself. This creature had a heavy, raspy breathing that echoed in the room and made the hairs stand up on my neck. Then she screamed, "Get out!" The voice sounded like 1,000 voices strewn together and resembled a growl. My father stood in the entryway of the opposite side of the room, and the look on his face was of pure terror. He could not make a sound. My mother was calling out frantically to him, but he just stood frozen. His already white, sick skin had now turned opaque. The bookshelf had somehow fallen over, and books were now flying about, slapping into the wall with a thud, only to start flying again. It was at that moment that my mother fell to her knees and started to pray. Just as soon as she started, it stopped. We were staring at one another for a long time in utter disbelief of what we just witnessed. I began to cry as realization set in, and we all huddled together after my father had turned on all the lights and locked all the doors. My mother told us to grab what we wanted to keep because we would not be back, so we gathered our things quickly and ran to the car. The next morning at my uncle's house, I remember listening to them talk. My uncle's voice quaked in disbelief, and I heard my aunt tell my father that she had warned him. Had they known? I never went back to that house until I was in my 30s. The house is still there, but the lumber mill long since closed and the town seemed empty. A few still remained, but they went inside and would not engage my conversation. The Adobe House still stood at the top of the hill and looked just as I remembered it. I did go inside, as it was obvious no one lived there. Besides the staggering amount of crosses, pentagrams, and various graffiti on the walls, the house looked the same, although somewhat smaller. My old pine bunk bed was still in there, with the name Frog scratched into its surface. Frog was my nickname when I was young, and I could still smell feces and rotten eggs. I've never been back. Looking on Google for the correct spelling of the name of the town, I was shocked to see a listing and a YouTube video of an Adobe house for sale. Although it is not the same house, the town is right. The house for sale belonged to a little boy named Sammy. His house was right before the bridge near the old church. We would get fresh milk and dairy from the dairy barn across the street. His parents never let him come to my house, but we would play on the side of the main road leading into the Vallecitos. I don't know, sorry. Part of the mountain had collapsed and would roll down the sandy side. Hello to Tim, who ran the general store across the street from our house. She would give me free candy and a blessing, as she knew how poor we were, even though I did not. P.S. I'd almost forgotten this story, as I was only 8 at the time. My sister brought it up when I told her to put the story of my ghostly visitor on the site. So, with vague memories and a little encouragement, here I post again.
Huh.
Could be. I mean, as a gifted writer, I guess, and that's the hard part.
Yeah.
And it's not like paranormal things can't happen to writers, too. But it's just harder to, when you think of all the people out there that are writing hoaxes and fabricated stories, it's a little tougher to believe when they read like novels,
Right. Yeah, it was well written. It sounded pretty. When the opening was just beautiful.
Yeah, it really was.
Summer. It's time for evil. Hey, what does the one on the screen say happened last? Because there was a spike. No, I'm sorry, the right on that one.
Oh.
Because there was a spike as you were reading that.
It said detected one spirit within 25 yards.
Oh.
For about 6 seconds.
Huh.
Did you see anything on the radar?
No, I only saw the spike.
Oh, okay.
After the fact.
It's supposed to show up on this radar thing here.
I've seen them pop up on the other one.
Right. Yeah, it still says refund and tractor was the last thing said, so very funny. That's hilarious. Refund. All right, so the next one is Witch Encounter. I still got a few to go, so we're just going to go long if that's all right with you.
That's fine with me.
All right, I'm just going to read through them. This next one's kind of short. This is Witch Encounter. Sorry, itchy nose. This experience took place when I was just 6. I do not remember much of it, though. I do remember a bit of the spirit's face. As my uncle told me, I was with him walking through the creepy streets of a village at 2 o'clock at midnight in Illinois. Suddenly I saw a woman in front of me. Let me describe her. She had long, rough hair, and her eyes were like pieces of marble. She was wearing a white nightgown, but when I looked at her feet, they were turned the opposite side. I couldn't believe my eyes, and I freaked out. Me and my uncle quickly ran away from there, and we looked back, but she was gone. But when we turned to run again, she appeared again. This time, she was in a long black dress. My uncle tried to communicate with the spirit. He asked him, "What does she want?" But he didn't receive an answer. After a few moments, she was gone. But for another year, we had plenty of experiences like this, but I would like to share them in another post. Well, thanks for that. please, anybody has some knowledge about this, tell me. I would like to have some opinions from you. We did call some of the ghost hunters, but they failed to find anything. Also, every night when I go to sleep, I hear pictures falling down, cups breaking, doors creaking, laughter, cry of babies, and many other scary things. This is so annoying. Me, I'm now 15, but I haven't got rid of any of these experiences. I do need help, please. Very, very unusual. So, I think you should probably get a cleansing. Maybe find a Deb Varner to look into this for you.
Oh, there you go.
I would recommend reading by Deb, if this person happens to be listening. I think that's important. If you're ever being hounded or harassed by something, and you can't figure out what it is, but you keep getting indicators, find a psychic and see if they can look into it for you.
Right.
See if they can pick up anything that you might be missing, because, it's just one of those invaluable gifts that some people have, and it can mean the world to figuring out how to put an end to those things, especially if it's tormenting you. I would have a lot of questions, too, if I had those experiences happening over and over and over. So, very strange. All right, so let's continue here. The next one is My Aunt, the Witch and Seances. This one's a bit long. This one's going to take a bit, ladies and gentlemen, so I hope you're not in a rush to go anywhere, because we're going overtime on this.
Overtime.
All right. All right, so let me see. I'm just skipping the part that I can there at the first. It relates to a particular family member and some seances we have performed. I've always been interested and drawn to the paranormal, and I even have a family member who was a witch, and I would like to share some experiences with you. Whilst I am drawn to the paranormal, there is no way that I would ever want any experiences remotely close to what happened to the witch, nor be part of anything remotely related to the happenings. The family member who was a witch was my grandfather's aunt, who was called Ksenia, not her real name. She only died 10 years ago when I was 15. My family are Russian and escaped the revolution and lived in Harbin, China, until communism came to China. They left in 1956. Harbin was essentially a Russian city, with most of the population being of Russian descent. As a young girl, Ksenia befriended a local witch who had passed on her knowledge to her before she died. Despite practicing witchcraft throughout her life, she still maintained her Russian Orthodox religious beliefs and superstitions. One time, Ksenia managed to upset the domovoi. Yeah, domovoi is a house spirit, according to Slavic folklore. A domovoi is like a guardian spirit, that every house has a spirit in their house, and it has its own personality. It is not just the energy of a house, but it is like a little being, a spiritual being that is in every house, and that's in, again, Slavic. Vein. It says vein.
Vein?
It said vein.
Which vein? V-E-I-N or V-I-V-A-I-N?
V-E-I-N.
Ha.
Vein.
Ha.
That was right in my ear. Vein.
I thought it said it again.
No, that was me. Vein. So, very interesting.
Scared the hell out of me.
So, domovoi is a spirit that's guarding a house, or is the caretaker of a house or whatever. And found dirty handprints all over her washing. No children were in the house at the time, so that was ruled out. We would then go to Ksenia's house, and she would always offer to tell her our fortune through playing cards or tea readings. Note that historically playing cards are derived from tarot, and you are able to perform readings from them, or do a seance via Ouija board. My aunt was severely negatively affected by one, where a spirit, a murderer from the Stalinistic era, attached itself to her and harassed her for weeks, and tried to strangle her at nighttime.
Oh, jeez.
Her card readings were always accurate to the day/week. I know the layout she used and some of the meanings. However, I am nowhere near proficient enough to do a proper card reading, so refrain from doing so. She would also cast spells on people. Her own sons weren't excluded from this, and would always leave a token of some sort, a homemade doll or random object, under her seat if she visited you, a spell. Sorry. Got something else. She once told my grandmother that she had this very uncontrollable urge to do nasty things, usually via spells, and that a voice told her to do these things. Every time she tried to fight this urge, the voice would get stronger and would threaten her. She would then perform a spell or do something nasty to appease the voice. My grandfather, who is a snoop, once visited her and snooped in her room and found a booty of weird items under her bed. Dolls, voodoo, ? Snakes in bottles, that type of thing. Over time, my grandparents distanced themselves from Ksenia as they didn't agree and didn't like what she did and didn't want her to influence their grandchildren in any negative witchcraft way. I always have pleasant memories of visits with her as a child, but was aware of who she was and what she did. Many years passed, and at the ripe age of 95, she was well into her 90s when she passed away. She was diagnosed with cancer and was given 2 months to live. She lived longer than the 2 months and eventually died on a Friday afternoon. With Orthodox religions, particularly the Russian one, religious celebrations are celebrated according to the Julian calendar and not the Gregorian calendar, current dating system in use. The Julian calendar is 13 days behind the Gregorian calendar, and as such, we celebrate Christmas on the 7th of January, which is the 25th of December now, and Easter is usually at a later date. Ksenia passed away on a Friday, which happened to fall on the 13th, according to the Julian calendar. Those of the Orthodox faith also believe that a person's soul wanders the earth for 40 days after they pass away. On the 40th day, a Mass is performed for that person to help their ascent to heaven. Her 40th day fell on a feast day, meaning that the Mass could not be performed. Two strange things occurred around her death. The date being Friday the 13th, Julian calendar, and the absence of her 40th day Mass. Is it a coincidence, given the life she led, or is something more at play here? Her son, who lived with her, shut up her room and left it be for many years after her death. When he remarried, he and his wife decided to clean out her room and use it for another purpose. When they did, they found the strange things under her bed and also string tied up underneath the mattress. The base of the bed was raised off the floor, and the flat part where the mattress lay were a series of springs, and it was on these springs that the string was tied in crisscross fashion. Knowing that this was one of her spells, they contacted a friend whose mother was also a witch, and they were told that the spell was made to bring tension and conflict to the house. What? And to reverse it, they would have to burn the string and walk away from it, not looking back. After the spell was reversed, an apparition could be seen around the house, believed to be Ksenia. Not long after this, they both moved out. Years after she died, I would have been 20 to 21. I'm now 26. We decided to perform a seance using a Ouija board. And I was present along with my mother, aunt, and Ksenia's son. We tried to summon her, but nothing happened. We then decided to summon a random spirit who would be around. The strange thing about the session is that all dearly departed family members came through. We spoke to both of my great-grandparents' mother's side, my grandmother, and my uncle father's side. It was surreal contacting my ancestors, and their answers were a mix of Russian and English, Russian spelled phonetically through an English alphabet. Thinking it strange, that all my family members came to us, we asked them why were they all here. My great-grandfather replied that they are waiting for someone. We also asked about Ksenia and if she was with them, and the answer was a resounding no. 3 months after the seance, my grandfather passed away. I like to believe that his wife and family were with him during his final hours to help him cross over. Since then, I have completed quite a few more seances, and every time we do them, only family who participate, we get family members contacting us. I have managed to contact my grandfather, and he is with the rest of the family, whilst I have made a conscious decision to no longer dabble in seances and the like. Every time I have done one, it has been a positive, uplifting experience to communicate and get messages from my family. I have never felt threatened or anything negative come through. I know that my family, especially my grandmother and great-grandfather, watch over me, and I feel blessed to feel their presence, even momentarily at these occasions and when I need them. Never have been able to contact Ksenia despite her spells when she cast them. She was always someone pleasant to be around. She wasn't all bad regardless. I don't think that I would want to encounter her spirit lest it is sinister or invites something sinister. Very interesting. That's a tough one. I don't know. What do you think of that one, Don?
Well, you know, there's something to be said about other religions and such, like voodoo and you know, the other religions. You know, there's so many different ones, especially when you're Santeria, voodoo, you know, those kinds down from the islands, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, you know, it really the mechanizations of those kinds of religions and such, you know, the chicken feet, all that kind of stuff. You know, the actual use.
My wife eats those.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, I don't know if I could do that, but anyhow. So, but I mean, you know, there's so many oddities to those kind of religions and beliefs. You know, in the actual casting of spells and things like this, it really makes me wonder what kind of validity there is. I mean, what significance does a chicken's foot have? You know, what's the significance of a chicken's foot in a spell?
I don't know.
So, you know, and okay, string, it was used to bind things. Okay, so the string in the story kind of makes sense. You know, that they use the string to bind the house with discontent and discord through the house. Okay, great. But all you had to do was burn it and then walk away not looking back. That just doesn't sound... I mean, you know, maybe it'd be just that simple, and I'm certainly not, you know, familiar with, you know, those kinds of issues, but...
Sure.
I mean...
that's to undo it in that manner, in that
right,
practice. So,
right.
In other words, you know, when doing spell casting in you know, ceremonial ways, it's like a recipe. It's like cooking. You know, first you do this, then you do this, then you whisk for this long, then as you're whisking, add this slowly. I mean, it's very similar to a recipe, is the best I can say. But
and a lip of newt.
And yeah, well, you know what I mean. And the eye of newt, and you know, the lips of a frog. I'm just kidding. But to undo it, perhaps there is a recipe for that as well. To unwind that energy in a harmless way. Now, is that the only way? No. But that's following that set of beliefs and those set of specific circumstances. So that makes sense to me. Although I wonder about why that, you know, has to be done in such a manner. But, you know, if that's what they say, that's, you know, they're the ones that know. I don't know. I did, you know, I have been researching a lot about Wicca and witchcraft lately, and I think it's incredibly interesting. And again, not because I think that this is the way I'm going to go, but I think that, you know, they all tell a story. They all tell a part of this, you know, the secret. And I think the more you can learn about different sets of beliefs and rituals, the more you can learn about, you know, the nature of everything. Because these things do work, and why do they work? What happens? And so, you know, that's, for me, it's a journey, an exploration to understand. And, you know, doing a show like Paranormal Portal, I should have a working knowledge of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's important to understand the mechanics of those things. So, at least I think so. The Witch on the Window. This one's a long one, too.
What time is it? It's quite a bit after, yeah. It's almost
9:18.
20 after, yeah.
Do you have a date?
Gosh, yes, with my bed. Maybe a handful of some kind of something.
Let me just look at the Witch House one here.
Sure.
Back in 1994, I was working in a seismograph crew in northern central Texas, about 30 miles northeast of Midland, Texas. The job would take us walking miles off-road along the countryside, laying out cables and equipment, and one day, doing this, we came across an abandoned farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. The house was one-story stucco with a long front porch, and the windows gone. The house had several oak trees around it. In the oak trees hung small, dried animal carcasses of reptiles and rodents that were found in the area. But the strangest thing were the paintings that covered the house. The paintings were a graffiti of strange symbols and writings that I did not recognize or understand and never have seen before. Excuse me. Even though we can see it's hollow indoors, none of us would dare go in. One of the workers had a camera and took a picture of the house. And shortly after that, I had left Texas and didn't see any of those workers for a couple of years and never really thought about that house. 2 years later, I was working in Gillette, Wyoming, when I met the worker that had taken the pictures. And after work, I went to visit him in his motel room, and he took a bunch of pictures out of the work we did in Texas. And at one point of going through the pictures, he asked if I remembered the old witch house I came across, and I told him I did, and he pulled it out and showed it to me. And I couldn't believe or understand what I saw. The house and the trees were in the picture, but the strange paintings that covered the house were not there. All I saw was an old tan stucco house.
Huh.
So the insignias didn't come through the film.
Right.
That's bizarre. Huh.
Huh.
Very strange. And this is another short one. The Witch's Curse. It all happened to me a few years ago, and I'm a trained wizard. Oh, really?
Really?
Nice to meet you, Harry.
Mr. Crowley.
Mr. Potter, I presume.
Mr. Portal.
I'm a trained wizard, and the knowledge that has been passed down. A few years ago, one of my close friends was attacked by something otherworldly. I will refer to my friend as D. D was in serious need of help and was on the verge of life and death. Every time D will go to sleep, the bed will shake. Started seeing images and pictures of the mind, etc. D was very scared and knew that the only way out is death. There was a time when D started puking out live worms, even if D was not infected. Backed by doctor's report and detailed examination, D felt the worms were originating from the throat and were crawling inside the head. I knew I had to do something about it, or else lose D forever. I cannot go into the details of what I did, but I managed to neutralize the threat, and D is safe. I was engaged in a long battle over months and was completely drained. The fight was both physical and astral. It was against demons and multiple other entities, and I am just glad D is okay. I also took a few photographs of the images that appearing on D's window as an evidence. It's not condensation, but because the figure is not covering the entire window, as you can see. You can also see a face of a demon, while there were various other figures that appeared in the window, and I managed to capture only a few of them. D could see live snakes and monstrous figures, and he was possessed as well. The recovery took more than a year before D could return to normal life. Yeah. Okay. It says a lot of you may not be familiar with this, but it turns out that a witch put a curse on D and wanted to kill.
What about go back to the worms? What?
He said the worms were coming somewhere from his throat and going into his head, but a doctor's examination found no worms. I don't know. Was puking them out. I'm just gonna discard that.
You know, let's throw that back to Harry Potter when good old
yeah.
Mr. Weasley.
Yep,
cursed
his
himself.
spell backfired. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Wow.
And that person claims to be a wizard. Now, is there a wizard? Sure, I suppose there's many systems of magic, and perhaps people do call themselves wizard, and that's fantastic. That's fine. I don't have any opinion of that specifically, but
Harry Dresden, wizard for hire.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, but anyway, what do you do? I guess that's the show for tonight. What are you feeling, Don?
You know, I'm feeling like that's the show tonight, folks.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you had fun. I had fun doing it with you. I had fun with the EVP/ghost detector.
Yeah, I still want to know what she means, whatever the thing means about, refund and tractor.
Well, the refund is...
Am I getting a refund on my tractor?
I don't know if a tractor came through, but refund totally plays into what we were talking about.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't know about the other word, though. And again, I had done an experiment with these same kind of things years ago. I was traveling around the country with a friend in a car, and we both had them on our phone, the same exact one. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting thing is that the words that would come up on each of our phones was different, but the same things were triggering it at the same time. So it was detecting something energetically, quote unquote, that was causing it to do the phonetic generation. But what was that? I don't know. But very interesting that the event correlated on both phones, even though the word was different on both phones and seemingly unrelated. So a word was generated by the same thing on both of our phones. So it did actually detect something and cause that to trigger. But I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about the whole phonetic generators anyway, because it's like, to use anything, the idea is that spirits can manipulate a piece of equipment with their energy to say any one of, thousands of words. But where the hell do they practice this? If you show up with a box and just put it out and say, if you use your energy, you can make it talk. How do they figure out how they're going to say something with what energy? That's the part that always sticks for me. It's like, where's the learning curve on this? How do they figure out how to use their energy to do that? So, I don't know. That's to me what stands out as at least questionable on some of those things. But again, many investigators have gotten many amazing responses directly in line with what they're talking about. So, I don't know. Maybe the spirits just know this stuff. I don't know. But I just want you to know we love you guys, and thank you all for joining us here on the portal. We gave you an extra long version of our Wednesday YouTube-only live stream. We hope you loved it. We hope you had a great time. And I got 21 in here, Don. What do you got for number?
I'm still seeing 20 watching now.
Okay.
Let me.
So make sure you click the like button,
there's
please.
a little thumbs up thing in the bottom,
Yeah, hit the
right
thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe.
Definitely.
And hit the bell so you know when we're doing what we do. But we'll be back.
Yeah, please ring our bell.
We'll be back on Friday night for another episode of the Paranormal Portal. And on Saturday, we will be joined by psychic Deborah Varner, who will be doing call-in readings, readings for callers to the show. So if you'd like to have a reading done on Saturday's show,
call early and hold the line.
Yeah, call in early. It'll be the number that you're seeing on your screen. But we'll be starting that show at 10 p.m. on Saturday night, 10 p.m. Pacific time. So whatever that means to where you are, that's outstanding. And we look forward to seeing you. Hey, Sarah. Sarah's FFS. I am psychic. Okay. All right. Well, love you guys.
Good night, everyone. Night.
We love
night,
you
Rega.
bunches.
Night, everyone. Pixie,
I'm not sure
Renee.
if I understood what was going on there. I just saw it on the screen. I was like, what? So, all right, guys, we love you. We'll be back on Friday and then again Saturday for more of the Paranormal Portal. And have a good rest of your week. Hope you make it okay to the weekend. But we'll see you there.
Yep. Have fun.
Bye. Don said bye. And so that means roll the credits.